Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the local pension board, Monday, 24th of May. It's 10 o'clock and we're on Microsoft Teams. And the meeting is broadcasted on YouTube and it will be available for viewing after the meeting. Due to the current situation, the meeting is taking place virtually with the members of the board along with the officers representing the boards. We're all online today. Please can I ask all members and officers to have their microphones on mute until they wish or are invited to speak. When you are speaking, please turn your video on. We have received apologies from Divya as the employee representative, so Manjit Saroya is the substitute, and he is the reserve employee representative. We've also have received apologies from Mrs. Panjit, the city rep, and we have got Catherine Meller as the union representative attending. However, she is an observer only and isn't taking part in the meeting. So good morning, welcome everybody. And now I go to item 1 on the agenda, and I propose that the minutes of the meeting held on the 8th of February 21 are taken as read, confirmed and signed. And I assume everybody is in agreement? Yes.
Yep.
Yes. Are there any comments on those minutes? I can see nobody raising a hand. So I go to item 2 on my agenda, and that is question time. No questions have been received. There are none. I move to item 3, to advise of any items which the chairman has decided to take as part as urgent elsewhere on the agenda, and again, there are none. We then swiftly move on to the declaration of interest, and I'll have to ask if there are any members who have to declare an interest. And
Yes, please. Yes, please, Madam Chairman. Thank you. I'm a member of the East Midlands Shared Services Joint Committee, and that's referred to under item 6 on the agenda in the report there. So I declare an interest as a member of that committee.
Thank you.
East Midlands Shared Services referred to. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. There are no other declarations of interest, and we move to item 5. And that item is your agenda item on additional voluntary contribution. The pension manager, Ian Howe, will introduce this report, and it is on pages 7 to 48. And I'm handing over to Ian. And I'll switch my camera off while I'm flicking through the pages.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. It's Ian Howe, Pensions Manager for the Leicestershire Pension Fund. This report is in regards to the prudential and the additional voluntary contributions. I don't propose to go through every line of the report, but I would pick out some of the key parts. The fund under the pension regulations has to have an in-house AVC provider. Scheme members can then choose to pay AVCs if they so wish, and those additional contributions are used to increase the members' future pension benefits. We've worked with the Prudential as the fund's in-house AVC provider since 1996, and it's worked very well over many years. The scheme members have a choice in terms of where they invest their AVCs, and the investments vary between very low risk through to high risk, or they can choose anywhere in the middle. They can choose a combination of investments if they so choose. And there are also options as a member reaches retirement or nears retirement that the risk can be changed. It can be effectively de-risked as they reach retirement. So members are able to choose what investments they wish to invest in. In the report, it shows the charges for the different various investments that members can choose, and they're all highlighted in the reports. The investments vary between passive and active. An active investment is more regularly monitored, therefore the investment costs, the charges to the scheme member are higher because there's more activity that takes place in monitoring that. Passive, less so. So I wasn't going to propose to say particularly any more about that. That's detailed in the report if you wish to read the information there. What I would also say is that since the start of 2021, the Prudential has experienced a number of service-related issues that are affecting scheme members' benefits in terms of the timeliness of benefits being paid. It's also affecting some other areas including members being able to track their investments in a timely manner on the online service. Communications aren't as effective and as efficient as they would normally be. And members are just having trouble generally getting through to the Prudential on their helpline. The biggest issue, though, is the timeliness of the information coming across from the Prudential, which is affecting how quickly we can calculate and pay members' pension benefits. Because of this, we have decided to self-report to the pensions regulator, which we have done as a breach, and we've detailed that to the pensions regulator. They have accepted the breach and effectively asked us to provide an update to them if it hasn't improved by the end of June. So I'm now monitoring progress closely with that in mind. I would say that there has been an uptake in improvement in some areas with the Prudential. I wouldn't say it's all negative. We are working very, very closely with them to make this improve as quickly as we can, because ultimately we're all here to try and provide the best service we can for our scheme members. But the issues do continue, hence I wanted to make the board aware. We invited the Prudential to come along to present to the board the situation. They were keen to do that, but then late last week they decided not to do that, and instead they have sent me a letter that if the chair is willing, I will read to the board. Can I ask the chair if that's something that you will allow me to read on behalf of the Prudential?
Yes, please. That will be most welcome.
Thank you.
Ian, you've just also mentioned that we've had to self-report. Could you elaborate why we had to self-report and what the implications are as well? Thank you.
Certainly. I'll answer the question first and then I'll read the letter. We have self-reported because it's delayed us in terms of the local government pension scheme in Leicestershire making payment to scheme members who are retiring who pay AVCs, which has effectively meant members have had to wait longer than they really should do in order to get the monies due to them. That experience is unacceptable. Members shouldn't have to wait. So we have breached the regulations. We're not making payments as quickly as we should be, but unfortunately, it's a fault of the fact that we haven't received the information in time. but because we are the fund and we are effectively liable to make payment in a timely manner, we have reported to the regulator ourselves for that breach, because the breach effectively is ours as a Leicestershire fund. In terms of what the next stages are, I need to report back to the pensions regulator by the 30th of June. That's the deadline they've set for me, in order to have for this to have been improved. If this has been improved, I can go back to them and tell them that. If the situation hasn't, I need to then go back, and then the regulator will take it from there. In terms of the next step, if it hasn't been, we await the regulator's stance on how they take that forward with us. Is that okay, Chair?
Thank you.
Of an answer.
Yes, thank you. That is good to know, because to just underpin the seriousness of this situation, really. Thank you. Read out the letter then, and I won't interrupt again.
Thank you, Chair. So this is effectively the information that the Prudential have shared with me. So I'm just going to read this exactly as it's been sent to me. So it says, "Dear Ian, our service performance. As you may be aware, we have experienced some significant delays in the processing of investments and claims. I am very sorry for the impact of these delays on you as a client of the Prudential and upon your scheme members. We are working through a service recovery plan which aims to bring our service back to normal and provide you and your members with the quality of support you deserve. To help with this recovery, we have recruited additional colleagues to improve the performance in all areas. We have made material improvements over the last year to the processing time for a retirement claim. On average, it takes 14 working days. I expect this to continue to improve. However, there are some older claims that we are addressing as a matter of priority. Complaints. Affected members have rightly taken action to complain to us about the service received. We are addressing these complaints and, where appropriate, paying compensation. Contribution processing. We have also experienced delays in the processing of contributions. We have taken action to ensure that where an investment has been delayed, the date of processing reflects the date of receipt rather than the date of processing, ensuring that scheme members are not out of market for a significant period of time. One of the challenges we have experienced in dealing with the backlog of processing is that contributions and the supporting data provided by payroll administrators are not always correctly referenced or have incomplete data. The payroll administrators have been contacted for additional information where required. We will be doing more work with them to improve the format and referencing of payments and data. This will in turn help us to improve the service we provide. Viewing plan details online. Your members can access up to the minute information on their plan when they need to by visiting pru.co.uk/online. If they haven't registered for an online account yet, it only takes a few minutes. Once they register, they will be able to check the value of their plan, change personal details, and message us securely, all at a time that suits them. Scheme revisions and annual benefit statements. As a consequence of the servicing delays outlined above, unfortunately, there is a timing impact on the production of the annual scheme revision information and annual benefit statements. The provision of your scheme annual revision information is expected to be at least 8 weeks later than usual. For Leicestershire, this is expected to be by the 31st of July. I am very conscious of the impact delays of this kind have on you and your members. We are working to produce the scheme revision information and annual benefit statements as quickly as possible. I know this information will be unwelcome and I'm sure will cause additional concern to you as a client of the Prudential. We have informed the pension regulator of the delays and challenges you and your members have experienced. I would like to reaffirm our commitment to improving the service we provide to you and your members, and we will update you regularly on our progress. Yours sincerely, Claire Bousfield, Director of Prudential Assurance Company Limited.
Thank you. Ian, before I go to members, because I see Councillor Shepherd's got his hand up, does that complete your report?
It does. It does. I guess. Not I guess. What I would like to say really, in summary, is it's a shame that Prudential aren't able or feel able to attend. They are clearly keen, as we are, ultimately to improve this for scheme members, because that is the critical point here. So we still wish to work positively in order to resolve that for our scheme members, because that's the ultimate goal here, to ensure that our members are receiving the service they should. For me, it's really deciding how we take this forward as a board. Well, obviously that's your decision as a board. The Prudential have offered to meet with the board separately outside of an open forum if the board so choose. That's obviously a decision for yourselves to consider. What I would say, in summary, is we need to consider very carefully what we are able to report to the pensions regulator by the 30th of June. So if the board choose to meet with the Prudential outside of an open forum, of which this is, I would suggest we look at doing that sooner rather than later. The Prudential have offered me some dates for that to happen if we want to do that. I would suggest it's a good idea, but maybe the board would like to consider putting something in writing to the Prudential beforehand. So that's really all I wanted to say, Chair.
Thank you. Can you, before I go over to Richard, in regards of the letter you've just read out, to me, it's still a little bit ambiguous. In the beginning of the letter, it states that it takes 14 days and there's a hope to have this sorted out by June the 30th, if I recall rightly. However, the letter finishes by saying, because of the delays, it is anticipated not before the 31st of July. Now, so we are already talking an additional time delay, which means that if we are having to have it sorted out for the pension regulator by the 30th of June, if you follow what I'm saying, it is going to throw up another problem. Well, from what you've just read without having had time to think about it. So just elaborate on that.
Can I come back on that then, please, Chair, if I may?
Yeah, certainly.
I think the Prudential there are talking about two different things. To be fair to the Prudential there, they're talking about the 14 working days being the average for the processing of a retirement claim, and that's the principal point where we have breached, because the processing time is taking longer, or has done, and that's been the point that's created the late retirements and the late benefits, which has caused the breach. So they're taking that as a matter of priority, and they aim to get that back to 14 days.
Okay, are they saying that they're going back to and can meet the 14 days again, or are they still having problems with that? Because that is something for us that is important. We need to know, isn't it? Because we have to tell our members that. So
Yeah,
that's the
sure.
point. Yeah.
So it says, just reading again from the letter, it says, we have made material improvements over the last year to the processing time for a retirement claim. On average, it takes 14 working days. I expect this to continue to improve. However, there are some older claims we are addressing as a matter of priority. So the way I read that is they've accepted that that is the critical point in terms of the funds or ourselves creating breaches because we're unable to process retirements as quickly as we should. So they're prioritizing those and they're trying to get those completed as quickly as possible to improve that. And I do believe they have improved in that. I would say, they have improved in that particular area. The point about the 31st of July is regarding.
Stop there. You say you believe they have improved, but we need to have the reassurance. So therefore, it is very disappointing that they are not here in person because they could answer it. So in a way, would it be possible to ask them to elaborate in a letter we will be no doubt writing to them to get clarification. Now back to the 31st.
Certainly, on that point, I'd be happy if the board choose to want to send a letter. Yes, of course, more than happy to do that. On the 31st of July, that specific point is around the annual benefit statements. So if I just read that particular paragraph, it says, and this is the scheme revisions and annual benefit statements. As a consequence of the service delays outlined above, unfortunately, there is a timing impact on the production of annual scheme revision information and annual benefit statements. The provision of your scheme annual revision information is expected to be at least 8 weeks later than usual. For Leicestershire, this is expected to be the 31st of July. So that is different to the processing of retirement benefits that they talked about earlier in the letter, Councillor Page.
Okay, and what does that mean to us, an implication?
The deadline for that particular work, in terms of the statutory deadline, is the 31st of August. So it means it's slightly later, but not outside of statutory timescales in my mind.
Okay. Right. And yes, and I think it's open to members now, and I think Richard has had his hand up first. So Richard, shoot.
Thank you. If I may, 3 points. The first is, does this in any way relate to shortcomings in the East Midlands Shared Services payroll functions? My first point. My second point is, the letter referred to them noting that members would not be out of the market for what they called a significant period of time. By implication, members will be out of the market for a period of time. What does that mean for members? And my third point is, I'd like them to clarify to us why, in the interest of transparency, they aren't willing to attend in person an open meeting of the board. Those are my 3 points, please.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Shepherd. If I can come back and answer those in turn. The first one is no, it's not an East Midlands Shared Service payroll impact. This is a sort of a national position across all funds, but all across our employers within our fund. So this isn't unique in any way to that. Out of the market, we were given assurance that the scheme members would not be detrimentally impacted on any late investments. We were told that wouldn't be the case. This letter doesn't specifically make that point. It says, as you rightly say, let me just find that particular point in the letter. Just bear with me one moment, please. Yes. We have also experienced delays in the processing of contributions. We have taken action to ensure that where an investment has been delayed, the date of processing reflects the date of receipt rather than the date of processing, ensuring that scheme members are not out of market for a significant period of time. I don't think that completely answers the point that we originally were told, which was members would not be financially made worse off. I still believe that's what the Prudential mean by that, but it doesn't actually explicitly say that. So I think that's one of the questions we should be asking them in the letter to make that point clear.
Yeah.
The third point, I can't really answer that. I think that's really for the Prudential to tell us. I mean, I understood and believed that they were very willing to attend, and I knew they wanted to. It was an unfortunate change that they made late last week, and I feel as though that's a question we probably wish to ask them. But it was the fact that they didn't want to present in front of an open forum was the point why they didn't want to actually attend the meeting. Unfortunate, really, and it's a shame because it was done openly, and I wanted them to be able to present to you so you could hear from them. That was the point, because we're here to work in partnership to do this together, and we have done very, very well for many years. It's in a very unfortunate position we find ourselves. So I feel as though I really have to sort of allow them to speak on that particular point, really, Councillor Shepherd. So I don't feel as though I can say any more on that, because I feel as though I would like them to actually answer that, maybe when we meet them, if indeed that's what you would like to do, on an alternative date.
May I come back on that last point, please, Madam Chairman? Yes, I wasn't expecting you, Ian, to answer on their behalf. I'm sorry if my question was badly phrased. I was saying I would like us to ask the Prudential why they are not willing to attend an open meeting of the board in the interest of transparency. So,
Exactly.
indeed, Ian, I'm not expecting you to answer or to put a yes for them. I'm sorry if my question appeared like that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Manjit has got his hand up next, but Ian, I agree, in the interest of transparency and being a financial body, I think they should have. However, my question is, before I'm going to Manjit, have they written to everybody explaining? Because it seems the onus is very much on us here. So have they written to the members? Have they done anything to explain, to apologize? And in the letter just now, it refers to members can go onto the website, but how do members know? Have they been told? So just answer that, and then it's over to Manjit.
I think all members will know, all members who pay an AVC to the Prudential will know there is an online facility, and they would have been told about that. So I'm sure that any AVC paying member would know they could go online to view their information. So I'm pretty certain we can say yes to that. In terms of have scheme members been contacted by the Prudential directly in regards to the current situation, I'm less able to answer that. I think possibly no.
Okay, that's another question in our letter.
Yeah,
then.
I don't think that all members will be aware. What we chose to do, Chair, is we wrote to all of our scheme members and made them aware, and that letter is in as an appendix to the report.
Yes.
Because we felt we had a duty to at least inform members of the situation, and really to sort of not to create additional problems, but really to be open and transparent, because we were starting to receive a lot of complaints from people, our own scheme members, who were struggling to get responses from the Prudential, and there were clearly the delays on the cases that are retiring. I feel that we will need to write to our members again to make them aware, but whether the Prudential choose to do that themselves as well, I think that's a question for them, really.
I'm going over to Manjit, but please to note, can we write to our members again to keep them updated and to have that correspondence and communication? Manjit, it is over to you.
Hello there. Thank you, Chair. Chair, I thought I'd just maybe add a little bit of detail to what Ian is talking about with regards to the issues with Pru, because I personally experienced them quite a lot of over a period of time. Just to give you a bit of feedback as well in terms of what happened to me, and it'll put a bit more meat on the bones of what Ian's explained in terms of some of the issues that maybe others have experienced as well. I left the council on the 20th of October, and I expected that I'd be paid my ABC contribution before the end of November last year. What actually happened was that I got paid those ABC payments, I think it was mid-January time. So that was quite a long delay. The payments of my pension, because I took retirement, were paid at the end of December. Now, in between those periods of time, I actually called up the Prudential a number of times and talked to an individual there. And their commitment to me was that I would get the payments for the ABCs by the 23rd of December. Obviously, that didn't happen. And then following up from that, I emailed them several times through their portal, which they said I should use. Never got any response. That's 4 times through the portal. I also rang them up a number of times, but never could get through after an hour and a half wait or 2 hours wait. And as a result of all of that, then I went to Ian and saying, Ian, can you help me with this? And he kindly offered to escalate on my behalf. And I think he did the same for other colleagues as well. And I think as a result of that, we had the feedback that we had, Ian, which was that they had some technical problems, some staffing problems and things like that. But in my mind, I think they do have to put these things right. And to be honest, an organisation of that size can suffer problems in the environment that we're in at the moment, but I would have expected them to have mitigations in place and at least communications back to individuals like myself in terms of what's happening, if they've made the commitment, and honour their commitments as a minimum, just the communication. So that was sort of my experience, and I think I had made commitments myself in terms of that money that I was to receive, and those things I wanted to do and were delayed. And so there were some issues I had to deal with. I think if those same issues were experienced by other colleagues who needed the money at a certain point in time, they would, have suffered quite a bit as well. So I think the timing is something we do need to address with them. I agree with the chair in her comments earlier on about the 14 working days. So it's that was my experience. Having said that, I think Ian and his team have done a really good job in escalating for us on our behalf as sort of members and getting responses. But I think Prudential do need to, we do need. I think it'd be a good idea to meet with them and even suggest, Ian, from our perspective, what our sort of issues were if they don't know the details, and also maybe make some recommendations as well if they're approved by this board in particular as well before we meet them.
Manjit, that is really, really good to know. I'm sorry for your plight, but the inside information is really good to know. Yeah. And thank you for being positive about our team, because I feel somehow dismayed that we seem to have negative implication not being the fault from our side. Now, if I may just pick up on your comments, and I'm sure that all members will agree to my suggestion to have that letter to the Pro, but for Ian to put in points of reassurance, what are the mitigation timeline, how are they going to honour their commitment, when will we see an improvement, and if that doesn't cover it, please give us another steer here before I'm going over to Caroline. Is there anything else you would like? in that letter?
No, I think that's fine for now. And I think, to be honest, Chair, I think if we do meet with them, I think other things then can be, the more detail can be discussed with them as well. So that's really helpful, though, Chair. Thank you.
But I think those are points that need to be addressed in the letter.
Yes.
Caroline, it's over to you. Thank you, Manjit.
Thank you, Chair. It was really just to give my support to what we're suggesting. I do think it's incredibly important we push this issue, because not only is the Prudential a good, solid financial institution, when people actually commit to want to pay an AVC, they're going by the actual Prudential's standing in the market, and they're also going into it not only on a contractual basis but very much in good faith. And I do think when they have let us down, it is putting the pension scheme in a bit of an awkward position with people who contribute into the local government pension scheme. I have to say, as other colleagues have said at the meeting, I think you've handled this tremendously well, very, very professionally, high integrity, but there just comes a point, doesn't there, whereby we do have to give quite a strong challenge back. And I do think a letter's important. I do think a meeting's important. I suppose from my point of view, one question that is at the back of my mind is the what if question. And the what if question is, what if they don't make the necessary improvements? Have we got some considerations that we perhaps need to make now in terms of what our next move is going to be? Because what we can't do is make what I would term to be an empty threat, so to speak. So I just wonder, from your point of view, Ian, what if they don't? And what is the market out there like at the moment for the provision of this type of service to local government pension schemes? So is it a buoyant market? Have we got alternatives? Where does that put us in the future? So that was my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. Very good question. The majority of local authorities, LGPS funds, use the Prudential as their in-house AVC provider. So we are certainly in the boat of the majority here. There are other companies that do offer in-house AVCs in the LGPS marketplace. Some funds have more than one AVC provider, so some funds will have other companies working alongside. So, for example, they'll have Prudential potentially and another. We don't at Leicester. We only have the Prudential, which does limit, I guess, where we can go with this in terms of offering alternatives. But maybe as a wider context here, we need to be looking at potentially other options. I would suggest, Caroline, but I would need to research this and think it through. So I am thinking out loud a little bit here, so I will be a bit hesitant in terms of my reply. But I would suggest that would probably involve a formal tender if we were to go out to the marketplace to look if there were other providers out there who were willing or indeed able to work with this. I suppose if that were to happen, and again, I'm thinking a little bit out loud here, but if that were to happen, I would assume, but it's an assumption I'm making here, that members could then choose to convert their AVC from Prudential to the other company if they so chose. They would need to then consider what their investment choices are and whether the investment choices are comparable between the two companies. You may find that some people may choose not to, so you could end up with some people in one AVC provider and others in another. But maybe that's okay. I mean, other funds allow that. Sorry, Councillor.
May I interrupt? Caroline, I think that is a brilliant question. And I was wondering, Ian, could we, not saying that we would, but as you've got to think about it, a small information report after you've done your research, what is available to us, what would be the impacts, just for information and to have something we could look at.
Sure, that's absolutely fine, Chair. I think it's a good idea. And thank you, Caroline, as well. I think this is really good, and I'm pleased the board are kind of or discussing this really in the wider context. Thank you.
But Caroline, your question was, what if it all goes wrong? So
yes, yeah. I mean, I think it's. Apologies, Chair. I think it's in everybody's best interest that we find a resolution to this. At the end of the day, we have had a very long-standing, very successful relationship with Prudential. Manjit's good example really brought it to light for me in terms of being an employer. And people finding themselves in this position within the council who are going into retirement. And of course, you know, in that situation, as the employer, we want to do the very best we can for those individuals. And part of that is making sure that their retirement benefits, not only the local government pension scheme, but if they have gone into an AVC, that's part of their retirement package, is absolutely paid on time. We owe it to them contractually. And as I mentioned before, there is something about people going into these in good faith that they will get their payments on time. And I just think it's really incumbent upon us to push this to the extent we can to get the best outcome for all our employees that sign up to these. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Caroline. Really welcome those comments. Ian, have you got anything else on that? Because Declan has got his hand up.
No, please pass over to Declan.
Yes, Councillor, Declan, the floor is yours.
Sorry, thank you, Councillor. It was just really a request for Ian. It'd be worth sort of just expanding the role of the pension ombudsman, just because sometimes it can feel it's us and Prudential, but actually there is an independent third party there who can make kind of, I suppose, decisions, can't they, around kind of levels of compensation, things like that.
They can. I mean, there is an entitlement under the regulations for a fund, I believe, to report to the ombudsman, but that's normally where it's an employer fault. I don't know whether the legislation stretches as far as to raise it on behalf of the fund on its AVC provider. I genuinely don't know how that stands in law.
But even in terms of, I suppose, us helping individuals in terms of getting redress, I suppose is my point, that it's not just about us and the Prudential. There is somebody who's going to act on behalf of individuals who are adversely affected.
If they went through the formal IDRP process, Declan?
I'm not a favour with the process. I just know that they have been getting involved in some of the cases.
Yeah, there is obviously. I think to try and expand on that, there is a formal complaints procedure, and that's as the point Declan makes, it would ultimately end with the ombudsman. I think the Prudential will I'm talking on behalf of the Prudential in some ways here, and I feel as though this really ought to be answered by them in some ways, but I know the Prudential are compensating and providing compensation, and I noted that's in the letter they've sent to us. And maybe they're doing that to potentially avoid complaints reaching the ombudsman. But you're right, Declan, the ombudsman would ultimately have sanction to make compensation payment, or make the fund potentially, or indeed the Prudential, I guess. Never really been in a situation where it's done on a via a third party, really.
But do I not recall rightly on the seminar we went, Ian, it was very much advocated that it is an individual who needs to put forward their concerns rather than, so if an individual is, like Manjit right now, who said, it didn't come in time, and all of those effects, he could genuinely make a claim to the ombudsman. Am I correct in assuming that?
Indeed, as an individual, yeah, absolutely. I guess what I'm trying to kind of work through in my head here is the difference between having individuals all going through the IDRP process all on the same point, that could all ultimately end with the ombudsman, but they would still have to go through the formal stages 1 and 2 through the internal dispute procedure process first, or whether it could be done at sort of a fund level, if you like. Are you with me?
Yeah.
On behalf of, and that's the bit I'm unsure about.
Well, we
but
can
certainly as individuals, they, any individual can appeal through the IDRP process. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, Ruth has got her hand up. Have you, Ruth? Over to you. Ruth, your microphone is off. There you go.
Yeah, sorry,
Hello.
I couldn't get my microphone off.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Ian, could I just ask a couple of questions regarding communications? I know that you've written to the members because I have an AVC with Prudential and I received my letter over the weekend. Have we also written to employers to make employers aware of the issue? I suppose that links in with the concerns Caroline was raising. So I just wondered whether it was something we should perhaps do as well,
Ruth,
just so that employers are aware.
It's something we haven't done. Sorry, it's on that point. No, it's not something we've done yet, but we are doing so. It's something we're going to be sending out in communications to the employers to make them aware as well. Okay, thank you. And then secondly, I just wondered, would it be worth putting something onto your member self-service as well? I mean, I know that you've written to everybody, but that's just a different communication forum that we may be able to signpost members to. Certainly, Ruth, we can certainly look at that as well. Yeah, I mean, what I was hoping was the Prudential would actually communicate with members as well, because I feel as though this is all coming from the fund, really. And whilst clearly we do need to communicate, and we have done, and we will continue to do so, it would be really helpful if in my opinion, the Prudential were willing to actually communicate directly with members and explain themselves really too. But yeah, we are certainly working on getting the communication out to the employers via a bulletin, Ruth, and that was something we were looking at last week. Thank you. But then the MSS point is a good point too, Ruth. We'll have a look at putting some wording on there as well, but Ruth, thank you. Thank you.
That's another point in our letter, isn't it? The communication and, from Prudential to the members and employees. Now I'm going back to Manjit. Manjit, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, just something that came up in my mind, just for clarification. Ian, when you mentioned the IDPR process, again, I think familiarity of that may not be fully widespread amongst members if they were to go down that process to complain to the, eventually to the ombudsman. Is that something that we'd make sure that people are aware of as well, if that's the way they want to do it? Or are you looking at which is the best way of doing it in terms of the fund helping a group of people or individually going forward? Is that one of the actions we're taking away to look into?
I until this meeting, Manjit, I hadn't really genuinely thought through exactly how that works. I don't know legally quite how that works. In absolute truth, I've never been asked that before.
Yeah.
So this is a new area. We've clearly dealt with IDRPs many times, but they're always from an employee on a specific point. What I don't know is whether the fund can do effectively an IDRP on behalf of a group of members. I just genuinely don't know. I don't expect it can, in truth,
Sure.
under the legislation. I don't expect so. I guess what we have done is effectively done that by reporting to the pensions regulator anyway. That seems to be the legal process in terms of how you take this forward. And then in terms of compensation, the members then get the compensation from the Prudential themselves, which the Prudential have already said in their letter they're looking at. But if a scheme member so chooses, they could still complain through the IDRP process. But whether that then means any compensation then gets paid by the PRU or the fund, I don't know, Manjit, is honest truth. I genuinely don't know. It would be determined by the ombudsman's ultimate decision, but Manjit, in truth. I think it's an area we'd need to work through in terms of how the law works here.
I think certainly members would probably, if they're in that situation, you know, their payments have been delayed for whatever reason by Prudential. I mean, me personally speaking on my behalf, it'd be good to understand what route we need to go down, and if Prudential are going to maybe offer us something based on what is it our own individual experiences and delays or issues that we had, or is it they're doing they're doing a generic payment to everybody? You know, a bit of clarification on that would be helpful. Maybe that'll come out as a result to the letter that we're going to send out, or maybe even the follow-up meeting that might come out of those things. Yeah, but that's really helpful. Yeah, thank you, Chair.
I think it's very helpful. We've got you on board, Manjit. Thank you. It has been a quite extensive discussion. Anybody else? Richard?
Thank you. Could we just press Prudential to attend an open meeting of the board rather than a closed private session? Thank you.
I did try that. Ian?
I can certainly ask them, but from the information I received at the end of last week, I think they're very reluctant to do that, Councillor Shepherd. They're certainly very willing to meet with the board and officers of the fund, but they don't want to do it in an open forum.
I think they should, with respect, I think they should be asked to explain to us clearly why they didn't want to do that.
I can certainly put this in the letter. I mean, what I would sort of propose as a way forward is I could draft a letter, if you would like me to, covering these points and share it with all of the board members to make sure that all board members are happy I've collated all your questions and your points, because I don't want us to miss anything here. I want this to be a collectively agreed letter.
And circulated.
And then, yeah, make sure it's circulated and everybody's happy. And I can put all these questions and all these brilliant points that you've all asked and made comments on in the letter. If that then goes across to the Prudential, and then we see where that takes us. But they certainly are willing to open to meet with us, but we can ask them why it can't be in an open, or why they seem reluctant to do it in an open forum, or indeed see if they change their mind. But I'm happy to take this forward in terms of a letter forward. Is that the right way? I just want to make sure.
May I clarify, Madam Chair, with colleagues on the board, if people think that I'm unreasonable in asking for the potential to meet us in public in
Ian,
tell me.
Sorry, Richard, I personally, unless anybody else thinks differently, but I have raised this point to Ian in all our pre-meetings. As you can imagine, a lot of work has been going on behind the scenes on this matter. So, yes, I have, and Ian can only but try, but I do agree, being a financial matter, and taking in consideration all the connotations, they should. But however, we can't force them. We can only but ask. But ask, please do. As to the letter, Ian, can we have a very, once you've put it together and it has been circulated, can we ensure that there is a very tight timeline for members to respond, so we make sure that it virtually gets back to you very quickly? And also the dates for meeting with the Prudential. on that, I wonder whether it might be also worth, I'm sure Declan will attend anyway, but may it be worth spending a little thought who else might want to join that meeting? You know, I'll leave that with you. I think you have got plenty of, to go on from up to this, and I think I have got no other hands. But before I close this item down, is there anything else anybody wishes to say to Ian and to note? There are no hands up, so I assume. May I just also, I know that Caroline Meller is only an observer and can't take part, but I do hope Mrs. Meller, as a union representative, has noted all of these points and is fully aware of the situation to put over to her members if she wishes. Now, with that, I thank you for this and good luck. And I close this item and move on, if that is okay with you, Ian. Okay, right, we move on to item 6 then, which is the Pension Fund Administration Report. And that runs from page 49 to page 72. And it is Ian again who has to present that. Ian, over to you. And thank you for all the work you have done on the Prudential so far. Thank you,
Chair. Thank you. This report is the similar report that I would provide to the board each quarter. This is the position from January to March. I won't go through every line, but I think it's important to point out that we've subtly changed the way we do this. What we're doing is I'm including more subheadings in this report, and the purpose of that is to cover the governance areas. Governance is becoming a greater spotlight, if you like. So we thought to make it easier for members and ourselves, and also so it feeds into the annual report, we would start to have more headings under the different governance topics. It also includes in here, the board is recommended to raise any areas of concerns to be reported to the local pensions committee. That's going to be a standard set of wordings that I have in this quarterly report. So if there are any issues, we can report them to or indeed you can report them to the committee if you want me to. So I just wanted to start by saying that. I won't propose to go through every part because a lot of it you'll have seen before, but I will pick out some of the key parts. The Appendix A is the quarterly KPIs for the period January to March 21. They are on page, sorry, I've just jumped too far ahead. They're on page 63 of the report, as are the whole year's KPIs. So this is the whole year from April 20 to March 21. And I thought it was worth including the whole year's KPIs because it covers the whole year of the pension section working from home. So I thought that was really quite a marked and important document to include in there. So I just wanted to share that with the board for transparency. In terms of some of the detail, let me go back. General workloads are in sections January, February and March. We're making progress in all of the areas really. They are high, workloads remain high, but they're going positively in the right direction. I think in March we're moving in the right way. I think the key points to pick out there are deaths. Deaths are now at a pre-COVID level in terms of new deaths coming through. We do still have quite a lot of deaths that we're still working through that were from the previous peak, but they are certainly a lot lower than they were, which is really good news. Complaints within the year. The within the period, I beg your pardon, not the year, in the quarter. There was one new IDRP stage 2, and there was progress on 2 of the existing ones. I won't go through all of those in detail, but I think one that was important to highlight is we've had a complaint that went all the way to the pensions ombudsman for final determination, and it has been made, the determination by the ombudsman has been made in favour of the fund, of the admin authority as ourselves. So I was quite pleased with the outcome of that report from the ombudsman. Data improvement progresses positively. We now have 64% of the employers using iConnect on a monthly basis, which covers 92% of the active scheme members. And that's a key number. 92% of members are now posted monthly. The plan for 2021-22, moving forward, we've decided to put those into 3 different categories, phases 1, 2, and 3 for the employers. And that's a plan for moving forward. Fusion, this is the move that Leicestershire County Council through the East Midlands Shared Services have moved to a new system, Fusion. We're working our way through that. There has been some issues in terms of the reporting out of the new system, but that's not unusual when you have a new system for a large authority. So we're working through those. It has impacted on some of the timelines, but we're working through it, and we don't anticipate any breaches off the back of that. We're sure we can complete year end in time. In terms of year end, when I wrote the report, 118 employers have provided their year end information. We're now at a position where we've had 185 employers provide their year end information, which is a huge step. So we've only got 10 now that haven't. So we're chasing those 10, we're working with them. And again, there's some data queries, as there always are with these sort of pieces of work, but no major concerns there. So that's good. So that's looking positive. And there's an audit report coming later, so I won't cover audit because I know Neeru's going to cover the audit report. In terms of regulation changes, I don't want to dwell on the exit cap because I know I've spoken at length to the board about this before, but that was then reversed. So the exit cap is reversed back to the pre-position at November 2020, but government are suggesting it will come back at some point, and it's likely to come back again in 2021, but we don't know any real detail as to how that's going to work yet in terms of the outcome of that. So that's one area to watch. One area around the TPR, the pensions regulator, they have announced that they propose to change their current 15 codes of practice into one code, which makes good logical sense. What I would just add there, that the new single code does not extend the regulator's powers in the LGPS on governance and administration. So it doesn't. We don't expect it to cover sort of greater power or greater areas, but there's some subtle bits that we'll need to work through, particularly around, or just look at around sort of cyber security. It doesn't cover investments, we understand. We don't believe it's going to cover investments for the LGPS, but they will be badged as best practice. So it's something we will need to look at for the governance side as well. In terms of fund policies, we did the consultation on the funding strategy statement, and there's a separate report on the board that will follow on the next report. So I won't talk about that one too much at this point. Actuarial, we did the actuarial tender. This is an important point for the board to be aware of. That was completed, and Hymans Robertson were successful and will remain the fund actuary for a following 5 years, with a possible extension of a further 5 years. So that's a big piece of work that my colleague Stuart, who's on the call, who will be doing a report later, did a huge amount of work on that. So thank you to Stuart and his colleagues for that. That's been a really big piece of work completed. We then have the employer risk areas, which you'll have seen before many times. Again, a lot of these have moved forward since I wrote this report, and actually a number of them have completed, which is great. So if I was writing this report now, the numbers would look a lot better. The oldest one, the David Ross to Cater link, has completed, and the City Shaftesbury to Compass has completed. And we've moved on the others significantly. So there's no areas of concern in any of those in this report. They've all moved on really positively. So that's all good. In terms of knowledge and understanding, we wrote out to all the board and committee members in terms of what their training and understanding is. You kindly replied, so thank you to all of you that did reply. We collated those replies together, and that's one of the appendices in the report. From that, we're doing training on the 26th of May, which all board and committee members are invited to, and we'll cover all the areas that were particularly shown as areas that you wanted extra training on. So myself and Boulash will do that on the 26th. So I hope you're able to join us on that. We have also signed up as a fund to the fraud initiatives and scams on the pensions regulator pledge, which is trying to basically protect our members from scams. I know some funds are doing so, we've done so, and that's a really good positive tick for us, and that really helps protect our scheme members. There's things that we do when we think there might be scams, or indeed if we're contacted by people who may want to transfer out who potentially could be scammed. And I'm sorry, this is a long report, but I'm nearly there. And then the final point is the work plan. What we've also done as under governance is we've provided a work plan for both the board and committees that sets out the work areas that we'll probably go through. It won't be an exhaustive list, it never is, because there's the extra things that come through, but it'll give both board and committee ideas of the areas that will be coming through in the year. So there'll be the things to look out for. I know I've spoken a lot there, but there was a lot in there. So please, if there's any questions, Chair, I'm happy to take them.
Well, thank you, Ian. And as I said to you before, it is a very comprehensive report, very well written, and I love it because you can go through and get an overview, within reading that report. So your additional update helped no end, and I look at members. Are there any questions, any comments? And everybody's blissfully happy. There are no hands up, Ian. So thank you, Ian, for that. And I move over to item 7 on the agenda, which is again yours, and that's on risk and exits as set out page 73 to 132.
Thank you, Chair.
You need a drink in a minute.
I just had a quick drink then. Thank you, Chair. This I won't spend too long on this report. This is something that I brought to the board some months back about some changes to the funding strategy statement, and we'd proposed some changes based around the regulatory change on employer risks, which were dated in September last year. I went out to consultation to the employers. I received a few comments back, but there were more questions around the clarity and their understanding to make sure they understood how it worked. Principally, there was no negativity received from any of our employers, which was really, really good. The consultation ended on the 28th of February, and then a few days later, there was some guidance came out from MHCLG and Scheme Advisory Board that related to this. I checked with our legal colleagues to make sure that that didn't fundamentally change anything in our proposed wording in the funding strategy statement, and it didn't at all. So I was happy with that. So that was good. But what it did do, it allowed me to look back at the wording in terms of, do you recall where if an employer leaves the fund in surplus, they can, if there's a pension risk share at the point of the transfer, at the point the TUPE takes place, they can ask for a share of that back. Well, what we did is we used the opportunity to make the wording more explicit in the funding strategy statement, to just not to change anything at all, but just to add more clarity as to what that actually meant, just to help the employers. That was all that was for. So there was no change at all to the funding strategy statement wording in the regulatory element, and we added some extra wording to the surplus part just to make it more explicit to help the employers. That's attached on the appendices. We also, as part of this, wrote a policy on employer risk, because this is an area that's growing and growing, and we wanted to make sure it was clear, because that's the most important point, really. It's making the employers clear what their responsibilities are, and indeed what our responsibilities are as a fund. So that's in the report as well as an appendix. If there's any comments from the board, I'm obviously happy to take those. But then principally what will happen is these will go to committee in June, on the 4th of June, for formal approval. But you have seen these already. So you've seen the funding strategy statement, the employer risk document just adds to that. So that's all I was going to propose to say, Chair, unless there are any questions.
It is in the appendices, page 77, and then we've also got appendix B. So all in all, it's set out in there from page 77 to 129. And I personally don't have any comments. Over to members. Hands up if you want to comment. Any questions? Well, obviously, Ian, you've done another good job, because there are no hands up, there are no comments or questions. So again, thank you very much for that. Right, we are now going to Stuart. That's agenda item 8, Good Governance Phase 3 Progress Report. And that is, Stuart, over to you. And the pages are 135 to 182 on your agenda. And Stuart, congratulations and thanks for the I can never say it, that report.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much.
Over to you, Stuart.
Thank you. This report is to update the board on the latest position regarding the Good Governance project. A further final report, Good Governance Phase 3, has now been produced. This expands on what was included in Phase 2, providing more detail around the initial proposals. One of the original proposals, that consideration should be given to the utilisation of pay and recruitment policies relevant to the needs of the pension function, has now been removed. In addition to the report is a proposed list of key performance indicators covering both administration and governance areas. The current position on these can be found in the appendix. We have started to look at these, but it is early days. The Scheme Advisory Board has now approved all the proposals within the Good Governance report and have made recommendations to MHCLG to take these forward. These will require MHCLG to produce statutory guidance, establish the governance framework, and implement the proposals. Once this is done, it is likely that there will be other areas to consider, including areas where we are fully compliant currently, that may need further strengthening. That was really all I wanted to say on that. I understand that the proposed timeline for the implementation of the new guidance, that they're looking at the regulations being in place for April 2022, but that's just a proposal at this stage.
Thank you. I quite like the way the structure is set out, because the little pictures of the structures, so you know how it is page 170 and 71, so you can actually follow it through. Anybody? Again, you've done a very good job because there are no questions, there are no comments. You sure, everybody? Yes? No hands up. Thank you very, very much, Stuart. Really good report, and looking forward to seeing you next time around. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, agenda item 9, and that is obviously again Stuart, but that's the pension and cyber risk report, which is page 183 to 200, and again Stuart will take you through it.
Okay, thank you. So this report is to update the board on any issues relating to cyber risk and what steps we are taking to deal with them. So cyber risk can be broadly defined as the risk of loss, disruption, or damage to a scheme or its members as a result of the failure of its IT systems. It includes both internal risks and external risks. So internal risks might be staff, external risks might be hacking. So the pensions regulator considers cyber risk to be an area of high priority and recommend that it is included on the risk register and reviewed regularly. So we've now put in place an annual cyber review, which will be conducted with the Council's Technical Security Officer. The initial review centred around the pensions database, Altair, and included a meeting with the system suppliers, Aquila Hayward, who were also asked to provide their latest accreditation certificates in relation to cyber, as well as a summary of their most recent penetration testing exercise, which is something that takes place annually. The Technical Security Officer concluded that he was happy with the documentation provided and confirmed that there was nothing of concern. His recommendations were that we carry out regular checks on Aquila Hayward's relevant accreditations to ensure they are kept up to date, along with checking that their annual penetration tests continue. Internally, we must ensure that access permissions for staff are regularly reviewed, and this is something that we have been doing for some time in conjunction with regular audits on this area. And that also that business contingency plans are put in place. And again, as part of our business continuity regular exercise, we include contingency plans within there. And the key element to that now is to ensure that if there's any problems with the pensioner payroll, that we have a contingency in place, and we do. And the same with the network. If the network was ever down, whether we would be able to access the system, and we have something that is technically possible that we would have to explore in those circumstances. So the next cyber review is due in October 2021. So following the completion of the exercise in February this year, internal audit concluded that personal data and assets are adequately protected, and they requested that the findings from the cyber reviews are presented to the board, hence the report. So in addition to the review, pensions also follow LCC policy with regards to cyber risks, which includes e-learning courses on data protection and information security, which includes a requirement that officers take a refresher every 2 years. And that's all I wanted to say on that report.
And again, a very, very good report. I do like the little details, the additional links and the glossary, because I never know what the difference between a risk and resilience is, but now I do. And I'm glad you've got a clean bill of health in the audit report. And I'm going over to Ruth.
Thank you. Can I just ask regarding the iConnect system? Because I think Ian referred to earlier that 92% of members' information is now coming through to the pension team via iConnect. Yeah. Did the cyber review include the controls around the iConnect system as well as the core database?
It's only included in so much that it's also covered by Aquila Hayward, so that their accreditations are in place. But it's also included in their penetration testing. So iConnect is included in that annual exercise that Aquila Hayward undertake.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Okay.
And I do assume it is all covered also within the audit report, isn't it? The audit report looks at that, does it not? The auditor.
I don't know if the actual penetration side of that is covered. Maybe Nero will expand on that.
Okay. Right. And who else have I got? Manjit, over to you. Oh, sorry. Are you finished, Ruth? Yeah, Manjit.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Stuart.
Hi.
Just wanted to ask you, Stuart, in terms of the annual penetration testing exercises and the information that you get back, are you saying that the information that comes back to yourself, or is it to the IT department? Because some of these penetration tests and the summaries that come back can be quite technical. So
it
in
does.
terms of action that need to be taken forward and so on and so forth.
It does, yeah. And the last report that we had was presented to Michael Coles as part of the technical review. So he would have seen that report in his review.
So you do get support from the IT department to decipher what those actions mean and how they can be taken forward, because some of them might be things that, the board would be interested in and we would need to help you with, but others might be things that the IT department need to do on your behalf to the infrastructure generally as well. So
Well, in that initial review that took place last year, yeah, I mean, I was very reliant on Michael Coles to give us the assurance that everything was okay. So really, that's how it worked last year. So I'm assuming that it will be on a similar basis next year.
Okay, no, that's fine. Okay, if you do need any additional support, then just let me know. I can help you as well, just as sort of more of independent view on that, supporting you. I'm sure Michael is fine, but just an additional sort of pair of eyes and ears and hands if you need any support, okay, or guidance.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you, Manjit.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Manjit. And there are no other hands up, so that means you can go over to your next report, item 10 on the agenda, continued improvements and system, and that is 210 to 208. Stuart, over to you again. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This is an update on the work being carried out by the Pensions Continuous Improvements team following the recent pensions restructure. So I just wanted to cover member self-service first. So we arranged for a meeting with colleagues from Leicestershire Police, including Ruth, with the intention of promoting member self-service amongst their LGPS members to increase the number of registered members that we currently hold. It was a really helpful meeting with Ruth and her colleague Yvonne, who was very enthusiastic and offered various suggestions. So as a result of that, some of their existing letters that go out will be amended to make reference to MSS, and it is intended that an intranet article will be released prior to the production of our annual benefit statements that are due at the end of August, basically to encourage members to sign up so that they can log in and see their statements. And we have a follow-up meeting with Leicestershire Police due in June. You'll see in the report that we have produced some age-based statistics on MSS registration, and it's perhaps not surprising that the older members have shown more interest in the site. We are, however, still keen to increase membership across the whole of the membership. We have also introduced key performance indicators to measure the registration take-up, and this also links back to the requirements listed in the good governance documentation that I mentioned a minute ago. Scanning, we have now an agreement in place for our incoming post to be scanned by officers from the council's central print team. This started at the beginning of April and has worked quite well so far. It saves us some time, which has been helpful, as the main colleague previously responsible for this has reduced her hours. We're also looking at plans to put a similar arrangement in place for the printing of documents. We now have an agreement in place to purchase a new product called Epic from South Yorkshire Pension Fund. So this allows us to record information that relates to employers in a database that is more easily reportable, including financial data and contact information, which allows us to issue more targeted documentation easily. An implementation has not been agreed with this yet, and it's subject to South Yorkshire's other commitments. Ian's already touched upon scams. Just wanted to mention that we're looking to increase the content of scam-related subject matter on our website shortly, including leaflets and links to external sites relevant to the issue. We've also got key staff to enrol for a 45-minute e-learning module, which has been well received by all concerned. So that was all I was going to say on that.
Well, very comprehensive again. And greatly appreciated. Thank you. And
Thank you.
I am going to put Ruth on the spot because I know her hand isn't up. But Ruth, do you want to add anything, please? And
no, as Stuart said, we had a very useful meeting a few weeks ago, and Yvonne from our HR department is taking sort of the project forward, as I say, looking at various mediums that we can use to try and encourage staff to sign up for member self-service. And we've got the baseline now in terms of what the percentage is as our current employees, so it'd be interesting to see whether the interventions that we make have any impact on the actual uptake. So sort of one to monitor, I think, going forward.
brilliant. Thank you, and say thank you to Yvonne, and thank you to Stuart and everybody who was involved. Can I see any other hands up for questions or comments? And again, job was brilliantly done. There are none. Thank you very, very much for that, Stuart.
Thank you.
And we are now going to go to item 11, which is, hang on a minute, I've touched something. I'll start again. Item 11 is the internal audit arrangement, and that is including the internal audit work, which was conducted between 2021 for the audit plan 21-22 and the pension risk fund register. And I would, before I'm going to Nero, who will introduce this, I really got to congratulate all of the team for the fantastic work and the unqualified opinion. Now, audit is Nero is the audit manager. She will represent the report, and I'm sure she will pass on our thanks to all the members of the staff and everybody who is involved. But I think for the record, Nero, before you start, can you elaborate on unqualified audit opinion? Because when I first started this, it sounded very negative, and we all know that that is a very positive term.
Absolutely.
So, you know, that will be very helpful for the record. And over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah. Just to confirm, unqualified actually is a positive comment, and it means there isn't any specific issues of concern. No major findings. So yeah, on the whole, it's a very positive report, and I will pass on thanks to the audit staff involved in us achieving that. So shall I make a start on the explaining the report?
Please do.
Thank you, Chair. So the purpose of the report really is threefold. It's firstly to talk about the internal audit arrangements of the pension fund. The second part is to talk about the work completed in 2020 and 21 and the overall opinions on individual audits, and also to introduce the plan for 21-22. And then the final part is to talk about risk management and internal controls in relation to the pension fund. So starting off on the background, so paragraphs 2 to 5 talk about the legislation around the need to have a continuous internal audit function and our role in that. It also explains the role of both the board and the fund treasurer. Moving on to the internal audit function itself, so paragraph 6 and 7, those give a definition of internal audit, who we are, what we do, the sort of standards that auditors have to follow, which are known as the public sector internal audit standards. It then goes on to explain the requirement for the head of audit to provide an annual report on the work completed and present a plan for the forthcoming year, which is why we're here today. Paragraphs 8 to 10 then go to talk about the different types of audits that we're involved in. Now, the majority of those are assurance or providing some sort of advice or even consultancy. It then goes to talk about the different levels of assurance, which range from full assurance to partial or little. Now, you'll see from Appendix 1, which lists all the audits that were completed last financial year, that the majority of audits were given substantial assurance. Now, this translates into a small number of recommendations to improve the system, but nothing serious. Indeed, there was one audit which had full assurance, which is no recommendations at all. The lowest level of assurance is partial or little. This is where there's a complete breakdown in controls and several recommendations are made, some of which are high importance. I'm pleased to say none of the audits were given that opinion. Is there any questions on that part so far?
No hands up, Nero. Carry on.
Okay, carrying on then. Moving on to the work that was completed in 2021. So we're on paragraphs 11 to 13, which again links into Appendix 1, which gives a summary. Now, given the pandemic and the need to redeploy a number of staff, four staff were actually assisting in the pension section at the start of the financial year. But despite that, I'm pleased to say that the majority of the plan was actually completed. There was only one job which has slipped into the new financial year, which was a job that was planned for the final quarter. So on the whole, I'm really pleased to say that we have managed to complete the majority of the plan. Just picking up on the point regarding penetration testing that was raised earlier, I think in one of the reports that Stuart mentioned.
Yes.
We did some work around the governance and risk report, and I just had a quick look at the detailed findings. And looking at that, we had quite a lot of conversations with Michael Coles on that, who was able to provide evidence of the penetration testing that was completed on a corporate level. Hopefully that answers any sort of questions that anyone's got.
Well,
okay.
Thank you very much, Nero. Again, it is very, very comprehensive. And with all of these comprehensive reports, they are very self-explanatory within the details that is set out. Any hands up? Any questions? Any comments? And again, there are none. So again, my thanks. And I will also, and I just have to say it, I can't resist. In the beginning of the report, under background, under item 2, it sets out the terms of reference for this board, and which says that as the county council is the administrative authority ensuring the effective, efficient governance and administration of the local government pension scheme. And I think we are doing that very, very effective and efficiently. And I think, again, you know, while I'm thanking and very generous with thanks, I think that has got to go through to Declan team, Kat's team and Ian's team, because I think this function is carried out 100%. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Nero, sorry.
No problem.
And I'm moving on to the last item of the agenda, and it's a substantial item. It's a pension fund conflict and interest policy. And that brilliant little piece of work has been done by Kat, who will be introducing it. And I believe has Anthony joined us? I can't see him.
Not yet. I'm just getting him to join. We moved on a bit quicker after the first item than I thought we would. So,
okay, get Anthony to join us because he is a legal advice. But again, while Kat is doing that, I talk to it because it's the last item on your agenda, and you have got that on. I forgot now. page. Well, whatever. When we are, it's set out as a full policy, and once we have sort of digested it and make no comments. That is page 231, by the way, and it will go over to the for our approval. Are you there? Over to you, Kat.
Yeah, I hope Anthony joins, but I've got quite a bit to say.
If not, introduce it, because it's self-explanatory.
Yeah, he's joining now, but I'll just say a few words to introduce it. So this follows on from Stuart's good governance report, which one of the scheme advisory board's recommendations was that each pension fund have its own conflict of interest policy to address how actual and potential conflicts of interest are identified and managed by those involved in the management and governance of the fund. The policy recognises that conflicts of interest have always existed by virtue of the fact that many of those managing or advising the fund may hold a variety of other roles and responsibilities within the administering authority or employer within the fund, or indeed their own private business interests. These do not necessarily preclude individuals from being involved in the management of the fund. It is just essential that such conflicts are recorded and managed appropriately to ensure individuals do not act improperly or create the perception that they may have acted improperly. This is intended to aid good governance of the fund in conjunction with other governing policies such as the fund's budget, investment strategy statement and funding strategy statement. But these are all set out within an appendix 5 to the policy. Sorry, there's building work going outside, so hopefully that's not it's not affecting the sound.
Okay, we can hear you.
It should be noted that the policy does not stand alone and should be read in conjunction with other Leicestershire County Council constitutional documents, including the Members and Officers Code of Conduct, as it recognises these already impose on elected members, co-opted members and officers their own requirements regarding the registration of interests and the declaration of potential interests. This policy is intended to strengthen these documents and recognises specific conflicts that can arise in respect of pension fund matters as set out within the section for what is a conflict or potential conflict, and then the specific conflicts are set out in paragraph 12.2, and they were conflicts that were set out in the Scheme Advisory Board's report. So for the avoidance of any doubt, the Public Service Pension Act 2013 is clear that a person does not have a conflict by virtue of their membership of the Leicestershire Pension Fund or any connected scheme. And then Appendix 1 within the policy sets out examples of conflicts, though that list is not exhaustive, nor will all of the examples give rise to significant conflicts of interest. Members are asked to always contact the monitoring officer at the earliest possible opportunity if there is any doubt regarding a conflict or potential conflict. To simplify the process, there is a step-by-step procedure for registering and declaring interest and participation in meetings. And so this policy will next go to the Pension Committee on the 4th of June for approval, and following which we would circulate a declaration of interest form for all members to complete, even on top of their, I know because obviously you, Chair, and Mr. Shepherd already complete the last year declaration of interest form, but you'll just need to do this on top of that. We will hold that register of interest and regularly review the objectives of the policy to ensure that they are being met, and further report on this matter as part of the Fund's annual governance statement. And that's pretty much all I wanted to say on it. So I welcome any comments or questions. The copy that will go to the committee will be slightly different because it will just have a bit of more clarification when it refers to scheme members versus members of the board and members of the committee, because I know that can be a bit conflatory, but yeah, just welcome any comments or questions.
Comments from me. What you have got in your papers has been updated, and well, there are finer points that Kat has highlighted, and it looks slightly different, and it is very self-explanatory. And as Kat just said, what this policy really covers, it is all of the members, because there is a variety. There are employer members, there are members from the police authority, so it covers everybody. So when we go into our normal agenda, when you are saying, has anybody got anything to declare, this is just for completion of the process. And I'm going over to Anthony before I'm going to go to Caroline. Anthony, do you wish anything to add? You're muted. Oh, he's okay. He's waving. Go on.
It's morning, Chair. Morning, members.
Morning, Anthony.
Thank you very much, Chair. No, I've got nothing to add to the report other than to say that with colleagues in finance and pensions, I've had a look at this the policy. You picked up in an earlier agenda item why we had to have this policy, and I'm satisfied with the contents. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Caroline, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I've got no questions as such. I actually think this is a first-class piece of work. I really do. And congratulations to everybody who's taken part in contributing to this piece of work. It's very, very clear, very, very well set out. And obviously in my role, being very familiar with the Code of Conduct, then it sits very well in terms of informing board members what conflict of interest is really and clearly about. So thank you for putting this piece of work together. I think it's excellent.
Yes. And yes, so there are no other hands up, comments or anything. So that is it. Thank you very much, Kat. And actually, it looks a lot better with all the green and the highlighting and whatever. So the piece of work that is going to the other committee in June is an all dancing and singing one. Well done, Kat. Right, there are no other comments. Does anybody have anything else to say? Comment? Nope, no hands up. So then we're going to item 13, which is items the chairman decided to take as urgent. There is nothing urgent except for reminding you of Kat's emails. If you can please reply, dates when you're available, 26th of May, training, and whatever else. So that would be great. Please do respond to the letter on the PRU if and when Ian circulates it as soon as possible. And the date of our next meeting is the 23rd of August. I thank you all for being here. I do not know, Kat, whether we are going to hold it in person or whether we want to continue doing this on Zoom. By all means, ask the members of the committee which way they wish to go forward, because it is probably a long way for some members to come, and it might be easier, say for instance like Ruth, to fit it in her working day. It might be easier to do it by Zoom. So if we can do that. And with that, again, thank you, officers. Thank you, members, for attending. See you on the 23rd of August. And I close this meeting at 11:44. Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you, Chair. Bye.
Thank you, Chair. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.